Rap-ass Vargas.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Philly Experience podcast, and it's a special welcome back today because, we've been out 2 weeks, a little vacation, a little free time. I hope everybody's still doing well, still enjoying their early weeks of summer as it approaches Memorial Day here in the next week. And, guys, I hope everybody's fresh, rejuvenated, ready to dive back into sports. Again, Max Gretzula, joined by Tyre Hood and Tanner Gilmartin. Guys, I mean, how was the 2 week break here?
Oh, well, let's put this out there right now. Y'all got a break from sports. I didn't. Let's put that out there right now.
That's true.
All right, I still got to watch the games. I still got to talk about them. I still got to report on them. I still got to break down audio. Yeah. Y'all got a break. I didn't.
That's fair, T. Yeah, I took a little trip to the Midwest. Got to see some places on the way. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Got to see the Cleveland Browns Stadium, who now I know they definitely have a better stadium than the Eagles. That's for sure. A lot of teams that I saw, better situation than the Phillies and the Eagles with stadiums, but that's okay. But yeah, man, away from sports for a while. I'm ready to dive right back in there.
Most definitely.
Nice solid road trip. I mean, I'm sure it was cool to get away for a little bit, just see not only a different city or two, but just to get out there and kind of travel for the first or second time since this whole pandemic started, even though it was a road trip.
Yeah, man, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Speaking of stadiums, speaking of the Eagles, I know we're talking about off-season football right now, schedule released as well. And of course, now the biggest rumor that we've heard within the last 24 hours is the Julio Jones wanting out of Atlanta. Now, we've seen earlier this year and even into 2020 back a little bit, Deshaun Watson wanted out of a toxic situation. Aaron Rodgers wants out of a toxic situation, in his opinion. Now we got another star player, not a quarterback this time, but a wide receiver. And I got to tell you, when you look back on the whole, recording, I guess, with Shannon Sharpe calling Julio Jones flat out on Skip and Shannon the other day, not telling Julio that he's live on TV. I know, Tanner, you sent that to us, and I know we were all shocked. But when I first saw that, and then I guess at the end of it, he goes, "Oh, by the way, we're on TV." And even the host of the show, she said, "Can you let Julio know that we're on live television?" Yeah. And he didn't get that memo until the end of that conversation. So, what's your first reaction? I guess not only with that whole story on national television, but also Julio wanting out of Atlanta.
Well, first off, this is why athletes, man, when y'all get interviewed and stuff like that, man, y'all got to watch y'all words, man. Y'all got to watch what y'all say. This is prime example right here. Like, you never know when you're going to get set up, and, your words hold value. Everything that you do, it holds value. So, athletes, you guys really need to be careful who you talk to, who you associate with, who you tell things to. All right. Try to keep things as close to the chest as you possibly can if you don't want things to be revealed. Now, with all that being said, all right, Julio Jones, what now? He clearly made that clear on FS1. All right, he did. And here's the thing. It wasn't a shocker to me that he wants out. It's been rumored for the longest, and he's actually saying it in his own words. But my thing is this: he kind of hurt himself and the team's value in terms of what they can get back from him, because now it's a situation where, okay, Julio Jones is saying he's going to be out, period, point blank. Like, he's not coming back to Atlanta. He's made that perfectly clear. So now that's less leverage on the Atlanta Falcons side, where they used to be able to negotiate and say to teams, well, if you don't give us the right deal, we can still keep them. Like, it's rumored that they want a first-round draft pick. Honestly, after Julio's statement, I don't think they're going to be able to get a first-round draft pick. Teams aren't going to be that desperate to get Julio Jones. They're going to, still present some decent, nice offers for Julio Jones, considering who he is and the pedigree at the wide receiver position that he presents. But at the same time, that leverage for the Atlanta Falcons isn't there anymore. So honestly, I don't think they're going to be able to get a first-round pick because of that. I was already questionable, with Julio Jones and his injuries and things of that nature and his age, about them getting a first-round pick for him. But with this recent statement from Julio Jones, it's just not going to happen now.
Nah, T. It doesn't hurt the market at all for the Falcons. Actually, it makes it more crazy for the offers because you know what, T. It's actually official. The Falcons, they were in trade talks about Julio Jones 6 months ago. It's actually hurts the teams that were more low key in talks with the Falcons. Now every team is going to be talking with the Falcons, and it's this is a special wide receiver. Now he's aging. He's on the older side now, but he can still play. He showed that. And the person that this is going to affect the most, obviously, is Matt Ryan, because this is where you jump into the business side of things. They changed up Matt Ryan's contract to better help the team. He gets paid immediately. Now you have Ridley, Kyle Pitts on the Falcons. So you still have those guys who now are going to get more touches with Julio Jones gone. But the thing I found really interesting, and Max, you already mentioned it, was when I sent you that video was because Shannon Sharp didn't start off the call saying, "Hey, you're on Undisputed right now, live," which I think is obviously that could be illegal, but I think it's not a big deal because the Falcons already knew that they were going to trade Julio Jones. I mentioned for months now they've been in talks, and I still think the Falcons can get a first rounder for this. But what I've seen from the market is actually teams are offering the Falcons other sort of mixtures in trade, not a first round pick, but maybe a second and a special player that the Falcons can use to obviously win more games. This is a bigger season. Julio Jones also mentioned he did not want to be on the Cowboys. Now that could just be talk. Who knows? Money talks more. We'll see how that goes. But I did like hearing that he did not want to be on the Cowboys. He wanted to be on a winning team. But why would that mean the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that is not set on their starting quarterback yet?
Well, shoot, at this point, let's just throw JJ Arcega-Whiteside in the second or third rounder up in there. Let's go. Let's get this done.
Nobody wants it.
Guys, Julio Jones, I want to mention here real fast. I know he's been obviously, in the media because of his whole situation the last few days. He's 32 years old, and we got to talk about, not only the whole situation around him, but the player that he is today. Just turned 32 back in February. The player we saw in 2018, 2019, even maybe 2017 and before that is not the same player that we saw last year in 2020. Now, a lot of people want to chalk up 2020 as a weird year, not only football wise, but just around the world. Do you guys still buy into Julio being a top 5 receiver in this league back 2020 or 2021, healthy, puts those soft tissue injuries behind him from last year? You have the hamstring injuries he was dealing with, specifically couldn't even run. And also the organization, like Tanner mentioned, as a whole, Kyle Pitts is there. You also have to look at Calvin Ridley being the number one wide receiver, kind of took over. The Falcons, of course, Julio says he wants to win. He was not going to win in Atlanta. Let's be honest. They're kind of trending backwards. I know that they just got a stud in Kyle Pitts, but that defense still needs a lot of work, and he's probably not going to win a playoff game, let alone even make the playoffs in Atlanta right now. Matt Ryan, still a good quarterback in my opinion. He's serviceable, but he's getting up there in age. So Eagles probably not the number one destination, but with Julio Jones, if he gets traded to the Eagles, and then that's kind of where he ends up, how does that stand for the Eagles standpoint? Does that give them a boost to maybe get them up to near the top of the division? Because right now they're projected to finish 4th out of 4 teams. Or is it really not the right time for the Eagles to really spend all that money considering how short they are in cap space?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Max. And this is, kind of flying under the radar a little bit, but there are experts, quote unquote, out there. I know there's also some of my fellow colleagues at WIP who think that the Eagles could make a surprise this year and make a push for the playoffs, considering, the division that they're in. All right. We know that the Cowboys, for some reason or another, even though they're probably the team that has the most talent out of all the 4 teams in the NFC East, I just threw up in my mouth just thinking about that and saying that. Regardless of that, they, for some reason, just can't get to the finish line and go to the playoffs. Something always happens with the Dallas Cowboys. The New York Giants, all right, they're still in development. I to this day, I still don't believe in Daniel Jones. I just don't. I think what's stopping them is Daniel Jones, honestly, and that's just my personal opinion. And with the Washington football team, I mean, they have a very stout defense. It's offense and them figuring out the quarterback position. So this division is still in flux. You trade for Julio Jones, even with the current situation that the Eagles are in, it definitely gives the Eagles a huge boost because at the end of the day, even though Tanner mentioned the fact that, the team hasn't necessarily committed verbally to Jalen Hurts. The team has provided a whole bunch of ways without them verbally committing to Jalen Hurts, them saying that they are committing to Jalen Hurts. One, they did not draft a quarterback in the draft at all. They picked up a quarterback, Jamie Newman, all right, and as an undrafted free agent rookie. They signed Joe Flacco. Flacco's not beating out anybody in competition. Flacco barely wants to play the football anymore. All right. Flacco's going to come in and be the backup. He's going to mentor Jalen Hurts. Let's be honest here. Jalen Hurts is quarterback one going into this year. So if you want to see what Jalen Hurts can do, the point is, if you want to see Jalen Hurts flourish, you want to put as many weapons as you can around him. You got one weapon in Devontae Smith. That's automatic weapon. Like I'm stamping it right now. But behind Devontae Smith is where we get question marks. Like a lot of people are expecting Jalen Reagor to take a year or two leap. That's questionable. We don't know that yet. All right. Greg Ward, he's an okay slot guy. After that, who else? Quez Watkins have flashes, but John Hightower has the speed, but can't catch the deep ball. JJ Arcega-Whiteside is useless. So you need as much wide receiver help as you possibly can. Not to mention the fact that, Dallas Goedert looks like he's going to be tight end number one going into this year because eventually the team's going to figure out what they're going to do with Zach Ertz, which is a huge weapon that we're going to lose eventually. So you need as much talent as you can around Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Tate. Julio Jones. I already mentioned this. Special wide receiver. I say go for it. Definitely. I don't care which type of season the Eagles are slated to have. A player like Julio Jones, no matter how old he is, 32. We see Larry Fitzgerald still playing. He's 37 years old, and he's on the Cardinals. And just a segue from that, I know DeAndre Hopkins said he would take a pay cut for Julio Jones to be on the Cardinals. But, I mean, they already have Hopkins, Fitzgerald, A.J. Green, Christian Kirk. I don't feel like that would be realistic. If Julio Jones really wants to be that guy, maybe, you come into Philadelphia, you got Smith there too, but you're still going to put on a show for that Philadelphia crowd. But Julio Jones is a wide receiver that always has been on the top of the game. I mean, he's been just competing. We're talking historically, stats wise, with like Jason Witten with the catches. You know how much the Cowboys use Jason Witten through his career, and he was there 4 years before Julio Jones was in the league, maybe 2 or 3, and Julio Jones still competing with them stats, putting up amazing numbers. Now, 2 seasons ago, he did have a bit of a slump, but that you could put that on the Falcons as a whole and how Matt Ryan was really playing after they blew that Super Bowl. And this could be a completely different story if the Falcons went ahead and they beat the Patriots in that Super Bowl. Who knows how the team would be right now? But he doesn't deserve to be on this Falcons team the way that they've been playing. Now, I know that they're going to have the young guys like Kyle Pitts putting on a show over there in Atlanta, but Julio Jones needs to try something new. He wants to be on a winning team, and he deserves that.
Yes, it reminds me a lot of the situation first with the Atlanta Falcons and them drafting wide receivers at a high level. It reminds me of the Roddy White thing where Roddy White used to be their number one guy. And of course they draft Julio. Julio kind of comes in, slots in when Roddy White retires, takes over that number one role. Maybe even was the number one before Roddy White retired. And then you have Calvin Ridley, kind of like the same thing. It's like irony, you have Calvin Ridley come in here. Now he's almost like the number one wide receiver. So I think now is the time, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, to trade Julio Jones, because we've seen it with the Zach Ertz situation where Zach Ertz, came out in the media. He wants to get traded. Maybe he didn't, but again, it's kind of both sides have come to some sort of standstill as far as not giving Ertz the contract he thought he deserved. Not asking for Travis Kelce or Kittle money, but he wanted that third mark. The Eagles weren't willing to go there. So the longer you wait, I think the worse it gets for the Falcons. And right now they want a first-round pick. I don't think they're going to get that. The longer this goes, I feel like it's the closer we get to training camp in the season. You can look at that both ways. Maybe a team gets desperate. They really think Julio Jones puts them over the edge, which he might do for a lot of teams, and they give him top dollar. Or you look at it from the Zach Ertz standpoint. The longer they wait, the less value that he holds. And of course, now we look at draft day this past year, and we couldn't even really get a fourth, maybe even a fifth rounder, because I don't think Howie Roseman would have gave Ertz away for sixth or seventh at that point. But we'll see. That June 1st, like T, you were talking about the other day with us, behind the scenes, off camera, about that June 1st, where the money won't hurt either team as much as it does right now if a trade were to go down. So it's definitely a situation we have to monitor.
One more thing to bring up to you guys is that a team that's really been in the talks about Julio Jones is the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because you have this Patriots team who Bill Belichick has been doing the most in this offseason, really boosting up this team. And now they're looking like a Super Bowl contender again. They're looking like they're back on top. Now that's yet to be official because they haven't played any games yet. But you have Cam Newton, who seems like he's going to be the starting quarterback until he messes up, which will happen. And then Mac Jones will go in there. I'm just being honest, Max. I know it's going to happen. Cam Newton's going to. But I'm always rooting for Cam Newton because I believe he can play better than what he was. But it's Bill Belichick. He runs a tight ship. And you just have guys like, Nelson Aguilar at the wide receiver position. You have Hunter Henry over there at the tight end. And this is like a flash of the Randy Moss trade for the Patriots too. And then another team, this is also going to hurt, the Indianapolis Colts, giving Carson Wentz another weapon. You got Pittman Jr., who hasn't really proved himself yet, but you got T.Y. Hilton, and then you combine that with Julio Jones. You got Jonathan Taylor over there at running back. That's also a dangerous team, and the Colts want something for Carson Wentz, so they know that this trade that they made with the Eagles really did pay off.
Yeah, and the Colts are another team that might even have the draft capital to be able to pull that off. But I will say, if he goes to the Patriots, you probably will be seeing a lot of that highlight of him in the end zone. Moss and that guy opening week a couple years back. I think we saw it over the weekend with that catch he did. One-on-one coverage against Julio, you're not going to win too many times. But of course, those are definitely two situations to monitor. Cam Newton again had a hot start to last year, mostly because of his legs. Right, we saw that week 2 against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday Night Football. Cam was able to really use his legs, and I know he fumbled at the goal line there and they lost the game, but the first couple of weeks he was really hot. Then his passing accuracy started to decrease as the season went on. He'll never be the same guy he was back in his MVP year in 2015, but can he be able to hold off Mac Jones for at least another year and try to, be able to not only stay healthy, but try to compete and start each game throughout the whole 17-game season? That remains to be seen. Now, the Patriots do struggle. Don't be surprised if Mac Jones were to step in there and play. But we have to transition now. We got to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. I know they're 1-0 against the Washington Wizards. Probably wasn't as easy of a victory as we wanted, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal still had solid performances for the Wizards, which we expected 2 Hall of Fame basketball players eventually down the road. But after that, we expected Joel Embiid to dominate in the paint against Robin Lopez and Alex Len, who really don't stand a chance against him, especially during a regular season, which we've seen. And Joel Embiid got into foul trouble there in the first half, picked up 3 fouls, didn't play a ton of minutes. Then when we need him in the fourth quarter, he really stepped up and shown out. But the guy I want to mention, I guess, first, and you guys can take this wherever you want, of course, is Tobias Harris, shooting 15 of 29, obviously dropping 37 points. This is a guy that, at least early on in his contract, especially back when we had Jimmy Butler, really as that fourth guy, he wasn't able to show what he can fully do. And we got on him, 5 years, $180 million. That's a lot of money, a long-term contract for a guy that wasn't putting up these numbers. But, a lot of people kept on mentioning, let's see it in the playoffs. Let's see it in the playoffs. Average 19.5 points per game during the regular season. Drops 37 in game 1. You got to be impressed with what you've seen.
Well, I'm gonna put this out there right now because I watched the entirety of that game. I'm just gonna say this right now. Seriously, what's up with the referees in that game? Seriously, oh my goodness. Oh, this game is so soft. Basketball is so soft, and it just irritates me. Like some of the fouls were being called against Joel Embiid. I'm just sitting there going, dude, seriously, what the hell? Like this is the playoffs. Like this is big boy time. Like you call those ticky tack fouls in the regular season if you want to, but doggone it, this is playoff time, man. This is where men are born. This is when boys become men. Like, come on now. Like, get your shit together. Like, seriously. Like, that was annoying to see that. But it was really impressive to see Tobias Harris, score 37 points. I don't think you're going to be able to get that offensive onslaught like that from Tobias Harris consistently. But if he can at least give you 15 plus, that's a huge help. Man, Joel Embiid is a monster, man. He was getting double team, triple team, and on top of that, getting in foul trouble, and he still got his. And I think that's really impressive. What really impresses me is that the bench stepped up. The bench stepped up in a huge way. Shake Milton stepped up. All right. Tease playing outstanding defense as usual. All right. This team can go far. However, I do see one problem. Tanner, I don't care.
Don't say it, T.
I don't care. Mom, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right here, right now.
Time was running out, T. Don't even bring it up.
People only going to go as far as Ben Simmons takes them. And I'm serious about that. I'm so serious. How long are we going to continue to make excuses for this man? Like, I understand he's a facilitator. He had 15 assists and 15 boards. I'm not taking that away from him. That is hella impressive. However, we are not going to go to the finals and win against the Suns and win against the Lakers if Ben Simmons only scores 6 points and goes 0 for 6 from the free throw line. It's not going to happen. I don't care what you say to me. Ben Simmons also has to step up as well. That's all I'm saying.
Well, T, I'm glad you brought the bad points up because now I don't have to do that and I can just be happy talking about this. But considering the Sixers did not play for what was that 7 days before the game, they're starters. They didn't play the pace. And then to come out against the Washington Wizards and play at that fast pace right away, you were worried maybe they were going to be rusty. Things weren't going to be clicking. But that wasn't the case. The only problem now, I will bring up a bad point, was that 3-point shooting. What was the first half was 3 of 17, I believe. It
was horrendous.
That's 18%, but they did pick it up. You mentioned Tobias Harris, and I was on the internet looking up the awful Sixers and Celtics series in the playoffs last season. And just to compare Tobias Harris, he averaged 15 points in that series, really when you needed him because Ben Simmons was not playing. That's when you expect Tobias Harris to really excel. But then 2 of 15 the entire series from the 3-point line, from the arc, and then 13% field goal wise. And then you combine his stats, 37 points. He went 2 of 5 from the 3, and then 52% field goal percentage, which already much better. This is a much different player than Sixers fans have seen in last season, especially. He's playing with Doc Rivers. That's also to do with it. And this is a team that they're really on the defensive part. Whenever they're not doing as well, Doc Rivers asked during a timeout or something in an interview saying that their defense needs to pick up. That's the button he presses when this team is struggling. He knows they're a great defensive team and he knows they need to pick it up. But T, you mentioned how you like the bench, and I was a little worried because late in the game when Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were out, the Wizards went on a 10-0 run.
They did.
And that's really concerning to me. And what also is concerning is how Joel Embiid was treated in that game. Now, I know he got 30 points, but the officiating and how he's playing against just Alex Len and guys like that, I think it wasn't, to me, a Joel Embiid type of a game where you're just like, wow, this guy can really play. Now, he was still playing amazing, but that's just another thing that was concerning to me.
It was hard for him to beat Joel Embiid because of the way the referees were calling him.
Right, and that's a home game.
Right, and it was at home to make all matters worse. Like, I'm sorry. So you're just going to penalize Joel Embiid because he's more skilled than the other guy? Come on, man. Seriously.
What the is that?
Like, that's ridiculous.
I think one thing to point out here, we've seen it a lot this season, and I'm assuming it's just because Doc wanted to rest him and pace, Danny Green here and there. But he did play 31 minutes. That's not something that we're accustomed to seeing. He's usually in that mid-20s range, maybe even some games less than that. But he really pushed Danny Green and Doc Rivers, I'm mentioning here, really pushed Danny Green at that 31-minute mark. Played well, at least when you look at the box score, efficient, 3 or 4 from beyond the arc, dropped 11 points. Seth Curry, I don't know what it is. Seth Curry just every game it feels like he gets nicked up or something. He hurt his chest and he went down in a heap. Luckily, he was able to go to the locker room and come back and stay healthy. for the rest of the game. He played 32 minutes again, 3 and 9 from beyond the arc here. And you want him to do that. I mean, you want him to take 3-point shots. That's why he's out there. So I'm not going to complain. But really, our defense as a whole, we give up 118 points to the Wizards. I mean, that's not good. They had 62 points at halftime, which I was really surprised about. They did shoot 40% from three, which is surprising to me. But again, I think one thing I want to look at here, if you want to dive deeper into the game, people want to mention Ben Simmons. The only thing I can really point to is the free throw shooting. He went 0 of 6 from the free throw line. I mean, I know he's not going to score the basketball at a high rate, but he does need to knock down his free throws, because if he doesn't, they're just going to hack him towards the end of basketball games. He's going to go to the line, and that's one thing that makes me a little bit nervous. I know that he had 15 rebounds and 15 assists. Of course, Doc Rivers even went as far as to praise him in the post game. But one thing here before I throw it to you guys to take it, I want to mention here George Hill. I think George Hill, a guy that when we got him, I was happy from the sense that we didn't have to give up too much. But at the same time, you have to look at me wanting to just see more out of him. When he steps on the basketball court, I think his 3-point shooting was big for me when I saw it, 40% in Oklahoma City before he came over to the Philadelphia 76ers. But I want to mention him not only from a player on the court, but just a guy. I know he's going to be here for a short period of time, but a guy that Maxey and Shake can really learn a thing or two from, because this is playoff basketball. I know it's against the Wizards. I know it's round one, but any experience helps. Shake is a guy that I've been hard on because he hasn't played great the second half of the regular season, and I'm still not sold on him being a point guard. I really want to see him as a 2 guard. Tyrese Maxey played only 7 minutes. He had a nice and one finish at the rim. The thing I like about Tyrese Maxey is he's a go-getter. You know, he's not going to sit there and be stagnant. He's aggressive, even during the regular season when he gets his playing time. And we saw it. A guy, his first playoff minutes, you know, you expect him maybe take a few dribbles, pass it back up to a veteran guy. But he really went in there and attacked the rim for that and one. I really hope George Hill in his short time here can teach as much as he can, but also Maxey and Shake to learn, because these are the 2 guys that are going to be in reserve roles probably going forward for the Sixers. And I'm happy because Tyrese Maxey, at least in the middle of the season and towards the end, people were saying, oh man, we should have threw him in a deal for Kyle Lowry. You know, even though he wasn't getting that many minutes, people really expected him because of how hot he started out. Remember with the COVID issues and things we had in the beginning of the season, how hot he was in the reserve role and stepping into that starting spot. But I'm happy. I don't know about you guys. I think that's one small takeaway I took from the game, and just George Hill only his play on the court as not only his play on the court as 5 of 8 from the field, 1 of 3 from beyond the arc, and he stepped into a solid reserve role, which we expected. But Tyrese Maxey and Shake Milton, this is going to be an important important postseason for them just to get experience and learn as much as they can.
Most definitely, and you touched on it, man. That's the one thing I'm concerned about. I mean, look, Tanner, you can tell me, you can complain, you can make all the faces that you want. I'm concerned about Ben Simmons and his lack of shooting. I'm sorry, it's going to be a detriment to this team until it is addressed. I'm sorry, it just is. As Max said, all right, towards the end of games, they're going to start hacking him. They're going to start putting him at the free throw line. The better the team, the more likely they're going to do it. And I would do it too, because guess what? That's your weak point on the offensive side of the ball. He is. He's a huge part of it, but he's also a huge weakness to it as well. So look, if this team wants to go to the finals, Ben Simmons is going to have to step up big time. Big time.
Yeah, T, I actually don't disagree with you. I think that in order for the Sixers to continue winning, and to show that they can compete against the trio of Durant, Harden, and Kyrie, is for Ben Simmons to step up and show that, him, Joel, and Tobias Harris are at the same level when they're all on. And for Ben Simmons to be a leader of this team and hit the line and go 0 for 6 in a game that was a little closer than we expected it to be. Now, Ben Simmons, he better have been in the gym at the line shooting 100 free throws until he felt comfortable with the percentage of the balls that were falling down, because earlier in the season, I was praising Ben Simmons for how good he was at the free throw line because he was much better. It wasn't, oh boy, here it goes. Here comes Ben Simmons to the line. It was, all right, more points on the board. Let's go. And now he comes and drops an egg at the line during the playoffs. It's not acceptable, especially from a leader, like I mentioned.
No, it's not.
Now let's mention here real fast from a Wizards standpoint. We talk a lot about the Sixers, and we do expect them to either sweep the series or at least take the 5 games. But Bradley Beal, we know, is a problem offensively from the Wizards, and we also know Russell Westbrook. He's hot and cold. And again, 15 points I believe he had, and 16 points and 14 assists he had. Rui Hachimura, I think, is stepping into a bigger role than he probably expected to in his young career. I mean, this is what, his 2nd year in the league or 3rd year in the league. He's playing 36 minutes a game on a playoff team in the Washington Wizards. So from his standpoint, again, you got to be happy for him. Again, Gonzaga, he played great for them at the University of Gonzaga for a year. And I was always kind of a fan of his. But nonetheless, you also have to look at their backcourt. We can't lose to a team that's starting, who am I going to say? Raul Neto at point guard. A guy the Sixers are very familiar with as like their 12th or 11th or 12th man a few years back. Now he's starting against them. Not only that, Ish Smith, I can't have any more than 5 games for me is unacceptable with Neto and Ish Smith there in the backcourt. And again, Robin Lopez and Alex Len. I'm sure this is a game that we can chalk up as, again, it's a win at the end of the day, but you got to remember the Sixers had off for about a week, probably a little rusty, but I'd rather have that than, them playing a bunch of games in a row like we've seen the Memphis Grizzlies had to do a couple of playing games. They actually, the other night, if you watched any of that Jazz game, they showed out and played really well against the Jazz. But going forward here in this series, Wednesday night, game 2, of course, at home. I think the last thing I want to mention here before we wrap up this segment and move on to the Philadelphia Phillies is Joel Embiid just trying to stay out of foul trouble, and him, listen, not having his best game by any means, but still having 30 points. I want to tie this in kind of with the MVP thing real quick, because I've seen Steph Curry miss the playoffs. He's one of the finalists. I've seen the Joker get a little and again, I've been trying to keep up as much as I can with the NBA playoffs, but again, he's getting a little, his tempers are rising a little bit in the games that we've seen against Portland early on. So from an MVP standpoint, I'm assuming we're all going to still believe the Joker is going to get it. But again, Joel Embiid going forward here, I know how important he is, but really, what does he have to? Does he just have to put his will into himself and just dominate, or do you want him to try to just stay out of foul trouble? Because there's got to be a little give and take.
He's still gonna have to be Joel Embiid at the end of the day. Like he can't succumb to the fact that these referees sometimes are just gonna call ticky-tack fouls. It's just gonna happen. He has to play Joel Embiid's game. He cannot turn into the Joel Embiid that starts taking those outside shots. All right. He's made his bread and butter this season on being inside of the 3-point line, hitting those mid-range face-up shots. All right. Being in the paint, being in the post, hitting those fadeaway shots. That's who Joel Embiid is. And that's what got him to be an MVP candidate this year. So he cannot change that part of his game. Look, if the referees are going to call it, then they're going to call it. You make adjustments then, but don't change who you are just based off of, a couple of calls. He can't do that. He has to play Joel Embiid's game.
Yeah, definitely agree to you. You can't have Joel Embiid acting stiff. You got to let him remain playing loose, doing what he does, because when he is Joel Embiid, and he's loose and having fun out there, that's when the Sixers really have the most success. I'm not saying go out there and act like an animal, foul out, and then have the Sixers losing games. That's not what I'm saying at all. But Joel Embiid, when he's happy, when he's playing, when he's doing what he wants, the Sixers are a much better team, and he's a much better player. Now, we saw it with the Raptors series a few years ago when he was really focused on more so of what he looked like playing. That's when the Sixers ran into trouble. But that's for me, that's also another key for Sixers success. We all mentioned Ben Simmons and how he needs to step up, but Joel Embiid remaining the same, playing at the same level he's been playing all season. That's really what the Sixers need.
Yeah, I'm not nervous about it. I just think I want us to see him in game 2. And of course, as we go on, continue to dominate. Go ahead, T.
Now, before we move on to baseball and the Phillies, I will say this because I've been watching a couple other games as well while I've been, doing my thing in the studio. I watched the Lakers and the Suns series game. Anthony Davis doesn't look so hot. He really doesn't. And I really think the Suns are really pushing the Lakers. I don't know what it is about Anthony Davis and that jump shot this year. It just hasn't been there, and it's been really weird. And if the Lakers don't look out, that could be a surprise team that's out of the playoffs, unfortunately. And what's up with LeBron's flopping? He's still doing that? Seriously? Really? Really, LeBron? Seriously? You're big and you're that doggone big and you're gonna flop like that. You gonna make that make it that obvious that you're gonna flop? Seriously? But yeah, Devin Booker's been on a tear, and I've always liked Devin Booker's game. I always have. I've always been a huge fan of his game. And you know what, man? I wouldn't be surprised if the Suns really kick the Lakers out. I really wouldn't be surprised. But if they do, that's a team to look out for in the West. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think at this point any of the teams are really scared of the Lakers per se. They're not what they were last season. But a team that I'm really focused on, even before the Nets, is this series between the Bucks and the Heat. Now the Bucks are leading the series, obviously. And as a Sixers fan, I really don't want to face any of these teams for the Sixers to face any of these teams.
I don't want to face Miami from the point of what they did in our last encounter with them. They bullied the Sixers. Jimmy Butler basically went to the coaching staff and said that the Sixers were soft, and they took advantage of that. This 76ers squad cannot handle the intensity and the bully mentality that the Miami Heat have because they did not handle it well towards the end of the season. They didn't. Listen, the Bucks, I think, I don't want to see the Bucks either, but at the same time, we'll still compete with the Bucks. I definitely don't want to see Miami. Miami is a team that could push the Sixers out.
What do you think, Max? Are you more scared of the Heat or the Bucks?
I think I'm more scared of the Bucks. I do. I think. Well, listen, that last game towards the end of the regular season really didn't tell me a lot. I don't think first of all, our starters barely even played. We were resting. We already kind of had that one seed almost wrapped up because we had to play the Orlando Magic, who were literally losing on purpose for that number one seed. So I wasn't too worried about it. I think the Bucks really showed last night why they're a title contender. They really just destroyed the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler, I get it. He's a very good leader. Last year, going to the NBA Finals, even though, in my opinion, I'm not going to say it was a fluke, but obviously a product of the bubble. I think the Heat are a good team. I think the Sixers are better. I think the Bucks are better than the Heat, but I also think the Sixers are better. The team, obviously, is the Brooklyn Nets. They looked iffy for the first half against the Boston Celtics, but really turned it on in the second half. So it remains to be seen. The good news is I hope these games all go 7 because, hell, everybody just beat the hell out of each other, and then we'll pick at the bones at when we get to play them. So that's the goal for me. I think what you see in the Bucks right now is Giannis, not only him dominating in the paint and as a leader, but Chris Middleton. Again, he had the game winner in game 1, and he's kind of their go-to scorer, a guy that people really, I think, underrate at times because he's not a hot name, and he also plays in Milwaukee. Not a lot of people want to watch them during the regular season, but again, definitely a scary team, and they got some depth to compete, no doubt. With that being said, now let's transition to the Philadelphia Phillies, and of course, when we left you guys there for a 2-week period, they were right there fighting with the New York Mets. Who, let me just say something about the Mets. Not only do I hate the Mets, but they never play. Every Monday or Thursday when there's kind of that getaway game because of the fact that they obviously had COVID issues early on the season, they got some games to make up. And I'm sitting here looking at the schedule right now, 23-25 overall record for the Phillies. I'm like, damn, we've played a good chunk of baseball games. 48 games at this point is a lot. Then you look at the Mets, 21-20. I mean, they got like a 6-7 game advantage of games in hand against us. And just looking at the schedule, that bothers me. But that's a story for another day. I think right now, over the last week, we know this team has had, inefficiencies in, hitting, in pitching, not only bullpen related, but starting pitching related. I will say this, and again, there's so many places to start with this team, but I do want to mention real quick this offense. Of course, we lose JT to injury, we lose Didi Gregorius to injury, and we lose Bryce now.
It's an outrage.
Since he got hit in the face, he just hasn't really been the same player. I understand that. But when you look at Joe Girardi here, he's going to take some heat because of the fact he's in Philadelphia with a losing record at this point in time. I know us as a group love to talk about the lineup. I think that's one thing we always like to dive into, and of course we did it last year and the year before that when we were able to be in studio together and talk about what we can do to this lineup to help fix our offensive problems. So I want to start with just I understand the talent and or maybe the lack of talent that we have right now is a problem, of course, with the injuries. But right now, where we stand, kind of without JT, we know for a couple more days, DD as well, probably for longer than that. The swelling in his elbow just won't go down. Where's the fix with this offense here? I know the defense is another issue. So many errors. Alec Boehm at third base, it's been a problem, and Reese defensively as well. We can't, in my opinion, can't take Reese out of the lineup because it's bad. It's just too hot right now. And I'm not going to say it's been hot. Like, he's not hitting 300, but he's given us more than what the rest of our lineup really is, aside from Odubel Herrera. So when you look at the number one fix for the offense, I mean, where do you look in this lineup to fix things?
It's hard to pinpoint one thing with this. Well, first and foremost, I've had a problem with this for a while now, and it's something that I'm starting to pick up the more baseball I see. What I see now is more players swinging for the fences, swinging for home runs than I do them trying to get base hits, which it's annoying to me. And I think with our power hitters, Bryce and JT and Reese, for the most part, teams will shift to a certain side to account for the fact that they hit, for the most part, they favor to hit on, those particular sides. So why aren't we practicing hitting to the other side? Why aren't we practicing hitting where the players aren't? That's the part I don't understand. I understand you're trying to get home runs and things of that nature, and Citizens Bank Park is really, it's a favorable park for hitters. But I don't understand from the concept of why are we not getting a whole lot more base hits than we really should. We have excellent hitters. We don't have scrubs as hitters. Bryce Harper is an excellent hitter. Rhys Hoskins is an excellent hitter. I don't understand why everybody has to swing for the fences. And I think that's the one thing that we have to fix is the fact that their batting stance and their batting approach is completely wrong. Yes, you want to put runs on the board. That's perfectly fine. But sometimes just getting the first and second base and putting that threat on the bases helps tremendously. And it helps kind of take some focus off of that opposing pitcher. So they have to change up their mentality of how they approach these bats. And it's getting absolutely ridiculous.
I think what is really against the Philadelphia Phillies is the expectations that are set for this team. You have guys like Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, Real Muto, Didi Gregorius, McCutchen. You got Aaron Nola on the mound, and still performing like they are 11-14 against division opponents. That's just unacceptable, especially in a division where the Miami Marlins are. And every single season, this team struggles against the Marlins, and nobody knows why. Really, it's just you think it's a fluke, but now it's just are the Marlins just better than the Phillies somehow all the time, like every season? But now they're struggling offensively, and Max, definitely. I mean, you already talked about it, but don't take Rhys Hoskins out of this lineup. He's now you said it. He's not batting 300, but he's batting 261, 27 RBIs. He's leading the team. Now he hit a slump because right after our last show, he was at 99 overall home runs, and he just got that 100th home run. Was it 2 or 3 days ago?
Yes.
And now before that, though, it seemed like almost every game he was knocking in runs, hitting the ball over the fence. He hit a slump, which, every powerful batter hits a slump. I mean, for years and years, we saw Ryan Howard, he either strikes out or hits a home run. But yeah, on paper, this team is amazing. The players that this team has, you have Odubel Herrera, who the Phillies gave another chance to. They're still sticking with him, even though in the beginning he was not performing well, but they have no other option. Yeah. And that's crazy to me because you go in to this season expecting the best from this team with just worries about the bullpen. Now you have to worry about the center field position again. Now every season it's the bullpen and then another problem pops up.
Yeah.
That's just, it seems like everything is going against the Phillies right now. And I'm hoping they pick it up soon. And I'm hoping that this is the only big slump that this Phillies team sees this season.
Yeah, Tim, I think you hit the nail on the head because I wanted to bring up the point with the shift and kind of not being able to hit the ball the other way. And for me, I don't want to turn this into the praise of the Herrera show, but I want to mention this. I think one of the things that we've seen is him continue to get at bats under his feet and see pitches at the major league level again. I like what I see from him, not only in this week stretch, but I think going forward, because he's not only a guy that I get it. Like there's times where he'll ground out to third base and he'll hit it, like flip his bat like he just hit a 400-foot home run. A lot of people hate that. Of course, you want to bring off the field issues as well. But when we sit here right now today, talk about winning baseball games, I think one of the things I want to mention here is one, he takes the ball the other way more than probably anybody else in this team. I mean, we've seen a lot of times him being able to hit the ball down the third base line, not only as a ground ball, but maybe even as a line drive down a left field line, and also maybe hook it into that shortstop area because they shift him over to the right side of the infield. So one of the things I like is he sees a lot of pitches, he hits the ball the other way, and right now he's probably one of our better hitters. I want to see him get moved up into a leadoff spot and get Andrew McCutchen out of there. One of the reasons is because I get it. He's going to he strikes out sometimes, not at the rate as other players on this team does. And there's going to be times where he's going to do something in the top of that lineup where people look at him and say, why the hell is he hitting leadoff for us? He just swung at a pitch in the dirt. But when you take the whole small sample size that we've seen from him and put it all together, I think he gives us a better shot at getting on base for the guys behind us right now than Andrew McCutchen does. I just don't see that same old Andrew McCutchen, not even the one that we saw in 2013 with his MVP season, but just a couple years ago, he obviously played for the Giants and the Yankees. Since that injury in San Diego a few years back with his ACL, he's not been the same player, and he's just not getting on base enough, especially walk. The guy does not walk barely ever, and I want to see a change at the leadoff spot. I think Herrera right now, not Gene Segura. I think it was my other option, but only because Gene Segura is just a little too aggressive for me, not as much of a patient hitter. Probably Herrera is too, but I think Herrera, I've seen Herrera get a fair share of 3-2 counts. Now, whether he strikes out or walks, of course, is up to him, and we've seen him strike out a fair share of times. But I do like that he works the count. I think McCutchen, I've just seen too many ground balls to shortstop, too many easy outs from him as a leadoff hitter.
And I do want to touch on this because, and you, Max, you touched on it earlier, but also, this team has offensive issues as well. But defensively, this team stinks. Let's be honest here, fellas. We have balls going into the outfield, and two outfielders can't even communicate with each other on who's going to catch the damn ball. This is pitiful. Like the defensive problems on this team are like little league stuff. This should not be happening in the big leagues. And you know what? There was an incident maybe last week where Joe Girardi was getting into it with Gene Segura on defense. And you know what? If that's what it takes to light a fire up under these guys, then it needs to be done. Because defensively, you went into it. Alec Bohm really isn't a third baseman. He's not. He's a hell of a hitter, not a third baseman. Rhys Hoskins is really not a first baseman. Max, I don't care what you say. Rhys Hoskins. I'm sorry. I mean, not Rhys Hoskins. Bryce Harper. Dude, come on. Between the hitting, between the fielding, is he really worth $330 million? I'm just putting that out there. Were we excited when he first signed? Yes. And I put my foot in my mouth when I said that I didn't care. I still remember that. However, he's not stepping up to the plate when we need him. I'm not paying you $330 million for nothing. I'm not. And we also got into it about Aaron Nola and if he's an ace or not. Aaron Nola is not an ace. I said that, and it's coming to fruition. Aaron Nola is not the ace everybody expected him to be. All right. Wheeler is an ace. He's an ace. He's been the Phillies ace this year. Honestly, we're not getting production from the guys we expect a production from. And that's the issue with this team. Honestly, when we need runs, we can't get runs. When we get runs, we can't play defense, or we can't keep the other team from scoring as well because the pitching sucks. And still, in the rotation, somewhat is still in flux as well. The bullpen is still in flux. It's a never-ending cycle with this team. It's always something. It's the same issues, but they just keep cropping up in different situations, and it's frustrating.
Got about 5 minutes left, Tanner. I'll let you go here before I wrap it up.
Yeah, first off, we like hearing that Max and I, especially about Zach Wheeler, because before the season started, Max and I were high on Zach Wheeler, and people were, especially a Mets fan that we got in an argument with. He was talking about a contract, and we were saying he's going to step up and show that he's really worth it. But to Gene Segura, now this isn't the first time he's been in an argument with the coach. I don't know if it really is personality issues on this team or not, but Gene Segura, I remember, I think it was last season, he didn't run that ball out. He didn't really get reprimanded as much. Now it seems like Joe Girardi is running a tighter ship. But that's something else that this team does not need. Stuff like that happening in the dugout when this team is struggling the way they are. But Max, you're not going to like this either, because I'm going to join in with what T said too about Bryce Harper. Now, this is right field, the easiest position in baseball. You put the guy who is the less talented on defense in right field. And if he's a good bat, really, Bryce Harper is known for his batting. And since he's signed on the Philadelphia Phillies, we've noticed that he sometimes loses pop flies easily. He doesn't track the ball down correctly. And that's something that I think we're going to have to get used to, because it doesn't seem like it's really improving that much. But it's easy to say that he hasn't lived up to his contract, because that's $330 million. Now, I don't even know what that looks like to live up to a contract like that. And I think expectations, just like for this team, for Bryce Harper, are always going to be high. And I think that's really what's getting in the way. And you have to admit, Bryce Harper hasn't really stepped up. And to some people, he never has stepped up to his contract.
Now, real quick, Tanner, I know you said, off camera that you didn't catch any Phillies games. Let me tell you something. There was a game on Thursday or Friday, and there was a regular routine ball that was sent out, and Gene Segura just he missed the ball, and he just laid on the ground. He didn't do anything. He didn't get up or nothing. Me and John Johnson ripped him this past weekend for that. This team needs a fire lit up under their asses. They do.
I think it was Friday, too, the one you're talking about against the Red Sox, if I believe correctly.
Yeah.
But Bryce Harper, let me tell you a thing or two about Bryce Harper real quick, considering, number one fanboy over here, Bryce. Bryce is at his best when he's taking the ball the other way to left center field. We've seen that when he was on his hot streak back before he got hit in the face. Not to make that an excuse, but, you take a 99-mile-an-hour fastball to the face. I mean, it changes some things. But listen, he's late on the fastball right now. He's late on it. He's getting to the inside pitches. He's rolling over on them. He's late on the fastball and fouling easy pitches back off that, he probably should put in the second deck out in like right or left field, whichever it may be.
What's he here for?
One of the things about this team right now, and I don't want to bring up the injuries, but they're a problem, because Bryce has the wrist injury right now. I know he doesn't want to admit it. He's got the back issues, of course. But when we get back to full strength here, I think right now, quickly before we wrap this up, I think Brad Miller, being hot as he is right now, he has to move up in the lineup. I would sit Alec Boehm on the bench from third base because of how terrible he is defensively at third base right now. I think the worst in the league, to be honest with you, statistically, defensively at third base. Brad Miller needs to get moved up to the number 2 hole right now and start at third base every single day, at least for the next few games, maybe even longer. Just let Alec Boehm reset. I think Alec Boehm has come up the ranks. He's dominated since he was probably 5 years old. Dude's 6'6". He's probably been the biggest and best kid on his team ever since he could walk. And he's finally now in his mid-20s, finally struggling at the big league level. It's probably the first time in his career he's ever struggled. So just let him reset, kind of get his feet back under him. And again, we're fouling pitches off. That's one thing I've seen. Boehm especially and Bryce, they're fouling fastballs off that they should be crushing. And once they get that figured out, I know they're going to get back on a hot streak. So I would go Odubel 1 right now. I would go Brad Miller number 2, just based on how hot he is. He needs to get up in that order. I would go Bryce number 3 when he's healthy, and Reese number 4. Now, I think Segura, real fast, he was playing well when he came back. We got to remember that Atlanta series on the road, since he came back from that injury to his quad. He started out in that 5-6 hole. You already had him, and I think he was like 10 of 17. I mean, he was hitting everything, getting on base a ton. I like him down there in the lineup. I like him in that 5, that 6 spot in the lineup. Now, what you do with Andrew McCutchen, I'm not too sure. I still would like to see Nick Maton back in the lineup. I don't know why Girardi decides to put Torres. I know Maton struggled a bit since we left Toronto and Dunedin a couple weeks. I know he had two homer game a couple weeks back, and he struggled since. But I'd like to see Maton back in the lineup, get some at bat, see if he can get that fire back underneath him. But again, just to sum everything up, Herrera, Miller, Harper, Hoskins, and then maybe even Segura right now at number 5. It's so hard because you're injured so badly with Gregorius, who knows when he's going to come back. I think JT, who's been hitting in that 4th spot when healthy, I would like to see him move up to number 2, right? Maybe move Brad Miller back down to 5, and then you have Segura 6, break up Hoskins, Miller, and Segura righty or lefty, righty, lefty. We'll see. I know Girardi doesn't really care about that, but I think right now when JT comes back, if you got a 2-3-4 JT, you got Bryce to back him up, and then Hoskins, who's the power hitter, that's kind of why he's out there. I like that better than what we've seen. So we'll see. We'll see what Joe Girardi does. Alec Boehm right now, hopefully, just get him some rest. That's my last point.
By the way, before we close out, Andrew Knapp is actually doing halfway decent. I don't know how we should feel about that. I really don't.
Not last night. He struck out 3 times last night, but I will say he's
he struck out. Come on, Andrew Knapp.
You piece of Swiss cheese.
3 times. And again, I get it. Andrew Knapp has to be in the lineup because JT's not. But hit him 8th, please. Just hit him 8th. I know. It's Andrew Knapp, though. You got to remember. Don't forget what we've seen 3 years ago.
Thank you. Don't forget it's Andrew Knapp, the guy who leaves the most runners on base. But also, before we end this show, on our Instagram page, we're going to have a video of our predictions of the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles schedule. So also stay tuned to that.
All right. You guys miss any of this episode, you can always go to philly-experience.simplecast.com. Available on all major download platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow us on Instagram at the Philly Experience Podcast, Twitter at the Philly EXP1 on Twitter, and also follow us on Facebook at the Philly Experience 1. Boys, it's good to be back doing this with y'all again. This Phillies team's got to step up, though. Seriously, this is getting disappointing. It's going to be a real corny summer if they don't step up.
They need to beat the Marlins. That's what they got to do.
That's true.
We should move it on to sports. Andrew Mccutchen.
Ridiculous. Man, that's ludicrous. What the hell is going on?
Oh.